Hi, this is Andrew Zezas, President and CEO of New Jersey-based Real Estate Strategies Corporation. We're here with you again today as part of our Financial Executive Thought Leader Series, and we have the pleasure of interviewing Sal Quadrino. Mr. Quadrino is Chief Financial Officer of Helios and Matheson, a global IT consulting firm. Mr. Quadrino serves in the dual role as that company's CEO. Sal, it's nice to see you.
Good morning, Andy, and very nice to see you, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for being part of our interview series. Sal, you've got a pretty diverse background. Your expertise span multiple industries. You've been part of public and privately held companies. You've been involved in, let's see, telecom, e-commerce, high-tech, distribution, startups, turnarounds. You've done a lot, and I'm excited to have you here.
Well, thank you very much again.
Well, I've got some great questions for you, and I know you and I did some preparation for our interview today, so why don't we just jump right in?
That's fine with me.
Okay, great. So, given what's going on in the world today, we've got a very funky economy, a lot of things going in different directions. Let me ask you the first question. What has been more troublesome? Revenue weakness for most companies or expense management? And in that context, how are most companies remedying those issues?
I would say that most companies, if not every company, has been struggling with the economic downturn and crisis that we've been faced with. And during those times, obviously, the focus is on cost reduction and cost control. And so what you see is an elevation of the role of the CFO, because he's the one that the companies would turn to in that kind of an environment. It's interesting, when I was in the air freight business, we used to refer to that as matching the lift to the load, understanding how many packages you needed to deliver, and then adjusting your delivery system to accommodate those packages. But in all seriousness, Andy, that can only go on for so long.
Yeah.
I was never a believer that you can solve a revenue problem through cost management.
Right.
And eventually you have to start focusing on cost. You often hear CFOs say that they like to be partners with the CEOs of the companies that they're with as far as providing input to the overall company. And if that's the case, then those CFOs need to focus on the top line as much as they do on the cost management line. So I believe that what companies are struggling with more today is that top line and the revenue line.
So sales is king, revenue is king, expense management is essential, but I think I've heard you say before that you can't run a profitable business just by managing expenses.
Yes, I think people have to realize that the sales represent the engine that drives and pulls the whole train. An old mentor of mine used to say to me that the sales force is the company, and the reason for that is that because the company is the sales force. Everyone has to be focused on how they're going to drive that top line.
I think there's a lot of salespeople out there that just heard you say that and went, yes! Let me ask you another question. Companies are trying a lot of different strategies. What are most companies doing today, talking about sales, to sell their products differently in light of what's going on in the economy?
Well,
I'm sorry, and that goes for services as well.
Sure. The first thing that again, while you say that you have to invest in sales and in marketing, it has to be prudent investment in those areas, okay? And while you're doing that, you also have to focus on maintaining the quality that you're offering. At Helios and Matheson, some of the strategies that we're employing are, number one is to concentrate on our current account base, and we call it mining the account, which is getting into the account, understanding the problems that they're facing in this current environment, and then working with them in trying to develop solutions as to how can we help them solve some of the problems that they're dealing with. Beyond that, of course, it's trying to expand your client base. No one wants to be concentrated in too few numbers of clients. So therefore, what you look to do is to expand beyond it, leveraging off of some of the expertise that you have with your existing clients so that you could kind of expand your client base and, again, not have all your eggs in the one basket. But the other thing is, as you get to know the client better and you develop that reputation for delivering quality and services that meet the client's needs. What happens at that point is that you start looking for additional work that comes from the client that may be longer in term. Let's talk about projects that may be beyond 6 months and maybe 12 months or longer. And then, of course, with that comes the higher margin business that you look to get yourself into. And so these are all avenues that we obviously explore at Helios and Matheson. But the other thing, too, is when you look at the cost side is how to deliver those services rather at an appropriate cost.
Well, so what I heard was that the company focuses primarily on its existing customers and not only improving services but improving their profitability by virtue of looking to see how else you can be of service to those guys.
Exactly right.
And I have to tell you, in too many instances, companies focus more on new customers and not on their existing customers. So I'm very happy to hear you say that.
Well, thank you.
Let's talk about gross profit maximization. How have companies been able to do that today in light of the economic environment by reducing cost? How are they maximizing gross profits?
It's interesting that you say maximizing gross profit because I think what's going on today is maintaining gross profit as much as trying to maximize it. Obviously, there's the cost side to that. But take our industry in particular. A lot of the clients are coming to us and kind of telling us what they believe they can pay for the services. So the real challenge then becomes, okay, how can you provide that service, provide the quality, and yet how can you do it and still maintain your own margins
and hit their price point?
Because you're getting exactly right. Because the margins are getting squeezed, and so you need to figure out how to provide the services, okay, and yet maintain those margins. And for us, that led us to trying to do more offshoring. And as you well know, our company has a significant relationship with India, and our parent company is actually in India. And so as a result, offshoring became important to us.
That's interesting. Are companies doing a lot more offshoring, or are companies coming back the other way?
Let's talk about offshoring, and then you also hear outsourcing, okay?
Right.
Because people, and I think they confuse the two terms. Outsourcing has been around for the longest time. When I was in the freight business, one of the things we did was to move some of our back office operations from New York City to Scranton, Pennsylvania, because it was a lower cost area that we could work in. Plus, we felt we could get a very high quality workforce there. Companies have also moved operations to the Midwest to take advantage of servicing both the East and West Coast. And then airline industries moved hubs into the Midwest and alike. Now, the other thing that companies did is they started to focus on what was their core businesses. And the basic thought process there was, I'll focus on what I know best, and what I don't know best, I'll outsource to somebody else. And a good example of that is I doubt there are many companies today that do their own payrolls. All right?
So we're actually seeing a little bit of both.
So that's the outsourcing. So that's step one, as far from my perspective. Okay. Step two then is, once you've crossed that bridge, whether you go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, Dayton, Ohio, or Mumbai, India, what's the difference? And the difference is technology. And in today's day and age, with the technology improvements that we're seeing and such, outsourcing to countries like India or to the Philippines or wherever else in the world you may want to go is a no-brainer. Can
be anywhere.
Exactly. The world has gotten much smaller.
Sal, we're about out of time. Those are very insightful answers. I think we could go on for hours. I think there's some really great stuff. I want to thank you for being here today on Financial Executive Thought Leader Series. I appreciate your time and your concepts and your comments, and I appreciate your being here.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony. I appreciate it.
This is Andrew Zezas with Real Estate Strategies Corporation and Sal Quadrino saying thank you very much for visiting us today.